extradite.
Also ahead, a warning from the drinks industry, who say the rise in alcohol duty will hit punters in the pocket.
Increases will end up getting passed on to the punter, so the punter will be, the one that gets hurt.
And tennis history is made as Carlos Alcaraz becomes the youngest man ever to win all 4 Grand Slams.
This is ITV News with Charlotte Hawkins.
Good afternoon. The victims of Jeffrey Epstein are demanding that Andrew Mountbatten Windsor testify over his links to the convicted paedophile. The former prince is facing growing pressure after the latest batch of the Epstein files were released. Meanwhile, former Cabinet Minister Lord Mandelson has claimed he had no recollection of receiving the sums of money mentioned in the latest documents. Both men deny any wrongdoing. Ian Woods has the latest.
The drip of Epstein revelations have become a torrent. Photographs and emails which Andrew Mountbatten Windsor must deeply regret, even if none of them prove any wrongdoing. What they do confirm is the wisdom of the decision to strip him of his royal titles before the latest embarrassing details became public. More emails between the disgraced paedophile and Andrew's ex-wife are equally toe-curling. In 2010, just months after Epstein had completed a prison sentence for soliciting prostitution, Sarah Ferguson wrote, "You are a legend. I really don't have the words to describe my love, gratitude for your generosity and kindness. I am at your service. Just marry me." The Prime Minister was asked about the latest revelations as he completed a Far East tour and said anybody with information about Epstein should share what they know. A lawyer for victims agrees.
If I were his criminal attorney, I would be saying keep your head down and don't say a word. But realistically speaking, I think the Department of Justice here in the States needs to utilize the abilities that they have currently under their capabilities and the laws of the states to enforce his testimony and potentially prosecute him in the States and extradite him.
The latest batch of material also embarrasses Lord Peter Mandelson, with photographs of him in his underwear, though he points out they provide no clear link to Epstein. There are also bank statements which appear to show he received $75,000 from Epstein in 2 separate payments. In a statement, Lord Mandelson said he had no record or recollection of these funds, and he said, "I was wrong to believe Epstein and swallow his lies following his conviction. I deeply regret doing so and apologise unequivocally to the women and girls who suffered." It's already cost him his job as Britain's ambassador to the United States.
My mother would be proud.
And appears to have cost him a long friendship.
There's no suggestion that Lord Mandelson's done anything unlawful, but I would claim the friend's privilege to tell Peter that he has been, at best, naive and foolish, at worst, greedy and duplicitous. Whatever is true as far as politics and public office are concerned, for Peter Mandelson, this is the end.
But with victims, lawyers, journalists and the public poring over the millions of freshly released documents, it might not be the end for anyone caught up in the Epstein social network. Ian Woods, ITV News.
And our political correspondent Tom Sheldrick is here with more on this. And Tom, there are questions for the government over both Andrew Mountbatten Windsor and Lord Mandelson, aren't there?
Yes, firstly on the former Prince Andrew, they'll know where public opinion is, and it's reflected in that firmer stance from the Prime Minister and his Housing Secretary calling on him to testify before the US Congress. There appears neither the UK government nor American lawmakers can force him to do so, and Steve Reid was reluctant to say earlier whether Andrew should be extradited if he was charged, while the senior Conservative MP Chris Philp was keen to push further, saying that he would support Parliament legislating to remove Andrew from his position as 8th in line to the throne. There's a similar question about whether Lord Mandelson could be stripped of his peerage. So far, the government and the Labour Party are just pointing to how he's on a leave of absence from the House of Lords. Steve Reid insisted the government didn't know about these latest alleged financial links between Lord Mandelson and Epstein when appointing him as US ambassador, but he conceded Lord Mandelson should also testify if he has information about Epstein's criminality. Finally, the question remains whether both men's associations with him will do further damage to the government or the royal family.
Still so much unresolved with this, isn't there, Tom? Thanks very much. The drinks industry has warned it will have to raise prices because of today's increase in alcohol duty. It's gone up in line with RPI inflation, and it puts more pressure on the hospitality sector. James Goodison has more.
Sunday afternoon in the pub. A British tradition that industry bosses warn is under real threat. From today, alcohol producers will face a duty increase of 3.5%. And there's concern that the cost will trickle down to publicans and pubgoers.
Perfect storm. Cost of living crisis, energy crisis, the business rates thing that we've just recently had has been a huge kicker. If government want growth, then, they need to have a look at what they're up to.
Now, these rise in rates are tied to reform from 2.5 years ago, tying alcohol percentage to the increase in price. A bottle of gin will now set producers back 38 pence. For a bottle of red wine, it's 14 pence. But actually, experts say it's gone up by £1.10 over the past couple of years. Beer's slightly less because of the lower alcohol percentage, but for beer, it's the first time that pubs are affected since 2017.
I think a lot of pubs, particularly the individual places like this, need protection.
Sometimes you'll go into a pub and it's now around £7, £8 in some places in central London. That's a big shock to the system.
Multinational corporations, they need to get their act together and take a bit of pain on their side.
Last week, pubs successfully got a U-turn over business rate rises until 2028, but other costs like national insurance keep racking up.
What really helps people get out and spend more money in their pubs is that they're earning more, and wages have gone up more in 1 year with this government than 10 years with the Conservatives.
Those wages could now be paying a little bit more for a drink, and for some landlords, it's another cost that may see them reach for the last order bell. James Goodison, ITV News.
A major incident's been declared at Southampton Hospital after a fire this morning. All outpatient appointments have been cancelled, and all but the most serious cases are being turned away from A&E. The fire has been contained and there were no injuries.
They are obviously being triaged and prioritised based on their clinical need. Those that need a higher acuity support have been moved to parts of the hospital where we can provide that. For example, in the intensive care units, in the theatre recovery areas and so forth. Some of those patients, many of them at the moment, are still being nursed and cared for in corridors.
A number of people have been killed after a Russian drone hit a bus in Ukraine. Emergency services in the country say that 15 people were killed in the attack, with 7 more injured. It took place near the city of Dnipro. The Iranian protester Irfan Soltani, who the US warned was due to be executed, has been released on bail. ITV News understands the 26-year-old was released yesterday with all of his belongings. Soltani is one of thousands arrested since the protests began at the end of last year. For the first time in nearly 2 years, the vital Rafah crossing in southern Gaza opened today. It has been closed since Israel captured the border in 2024, and its reopening marks the next phase of the ceasefire agreement. Laura Jones has more.
A gate to the outside world. After nearly 2 years, Israel says it has partially reopened the Rafah crossing between the Gaza Strip and Egypt. This morning, trucks full of aid supplies and blankets went through for Israeli inspection, raising hopes on the streets of Khan Yunis. This woman said there are many people who want to travel, not to emigrate, but rather because they're students or want to return to their jobs, people who need treatment. Before the war, the crossing was the main direct exit point for most Palestinians in Gaza, as well as a key entry point for humanitarian aid in the south. It's largely been shut since it was seized by Israel in May 2024. A full reopening would allow Palestinians waiting for medical treatment to travel abroad, a number that the World Health Organization has suggested could be as many as 20,000 people.
All these patients are critically ill patients, and they need to be referred out of Gaza. We're talking about cancer patients, cardiac patients.
But the reopening today is part of a trial, mainly to test security systems overseen by Egyptian, EU and Israeli officials. The two-way passage for residents is expected to begin tomorrow. But very limited numbers will be allowed through, with strict checks in place. And constraints are being imposed elsewhere. Israel said it would end the work of Doctors Without Borders in Gaza after it failed to provide a list of its Palestinian staff. Israeli authorities have accused the charity of providing cover for Hamas militants, which it has strongly denied. The pilot in Rafah does mark a key step forward as the ceasefire deal brokered by the US moves into its second phase, offering some hope to those who have little. Laura Jones, ITV News.
Football now, and it's been a bumper day of Premier League action. Manchester and Nottingham Forest were held. And finally, this evening, Carlos Alcaraz made tennis history today, becoming the youngest man ever to win all 4 Grand Slams. The 22-year-old beat Novak Djokovic in 4 sets, and despite the 16-year age difference, both players show why they're viewed as icons of tennis. Chris Scudder reports.
It was all about the numbers, a record 24 Grand Slams already secure, but how Djokovic so badly wanted number 25. The 38-year-old was giving away 16 years to Carlos Alcaraz, but in the first set, he turned back the clock. First blood is drawn. It was an almost perfect first set from the veteran, but Alcaraz was also chasing history, and as the two greats traded blows, the Spaniard showed just why he was on the way to 7 Grand Slams by the age of 22. Djokovic looked exhausted. His legs could not match the elastic desire, and Alcaraz went 2 sets to 1 up. The prospect of beating the world's top 2 players over 5 sets in the space of 3 days looked an impossible task for the 38-year-old. Still, there were signs of Djokovic's legendary endurance and will to win, with the crowd on his side. He might just be able to do it. But this was the day of destiny for Carlos Alcaraz. The youngest man ever to win all 4 Grand Slam titles at just 22.
I think the best word to describe it is historic, legendary. So congratulations, and I wish you best of luck. You're so young, you have a lot of time, like myself. So I'm sure we'll be seeing each other many more times in the next 10 years.
And at this rate, a decade from now, few would bet against Alcaraz breaking the Djokovic record as the most successful male player in tennis history. Chris Scudder, ITV News.
What an achievement. That's all for now. We'll be back with the latest at 10 tonight. Until then, have a lovely evening. Bye-bye.